Good morning to everyone here and everyone on Zoom. Really lovely to see that we have just as many people, I think, more or less, as yesterday. And those who are not here in person, I think, joined on Zoom instead. So, yeah, at least you have the perception of a big room of people supporting you. And now you have the Zoomies as well. So maybe that's even better. So, aren't we blessed with beautiful weather? It's uncanny that we're having so much sunshine, beautiful clear blue skies. And yeah, that impression of just the atmosphere warming up somehow. It was really lovely to arrive today. And is this loud enough? It seems softer than yesterday. Yeah, it's okay. All right. Yeah, just have that sense of settling down together. Feels very different, at least for me on the second day, because we already have some sort of happy memory here, hopefully, for most of you. So today there was a little bit of discussion about what to teach, and I've tried to combine it. And if that doesn't work, well, I'll just have to do another retreat at some time. So yeah, Samaneri Upachala was very kind because I suggested doing a talk on resentment separately another time, and she's like, "You've got enough work." So anyway, we'll see what happens. So today I thought we could talk through the Karaniya Mettā Sutta a little bit and see what the Buddha himself says about the practice of loving kindness. And he does refer to ill will and the importance of overcoming it. So at that point, I'll say a few words about that as well. But just to recap slightly on the theme that we've already begun, on the theme of loving kindness, it is a practice and a perception, a cultivation of mind that can be trained. So it's not that you either have it or you don't. And the Buddha said that it's possible to develop wholesome states. If it wasn't possible, he wouldn't ask us to do it. But because it is possible to develop wholesome states, he asks us to do it. And that's what we're all doing here. So it begins by putting the causes in place for metta to arise, not by trying to will it or trying to kind of squeeze it out of us or anything like that, but just by allowing ourselves the space, the time, and giving, in a sense, the process our trust. We have to trust the power of intentions to actually bring about the fruits of the practice. And it's not when we wish it to happen, it's when nature happens by itself, in a sense. It's very special to be in Perth every year during the springtime because that's the season of the wildflowers. And it's amazing that the wildflowers start to come out seemingly all at once, but in their own kind of synchronized way. So it happens around September when the first lot come out, and the whole bush is like gold and silver. There are all these beautiful acacias, otherwise known as wattles. They're like little mini yellow puffballs. The whole place smells of honey. And then you get these tiny little white fluffy flowers as well. And the whole thing just looks like gold and silver. And then after a while, these other really scruffy, unpromising bushes that you don't even notice start to come out with all these very delicate blue flowers. And then a couple of days later, the pink flowers start to come. And you would never expect this to happen. You just look at the bushes and you think, well, that's nothing, or you don't even see them, they're just full of thorns. But lo and behold, when the time is right, when the conditions are right, they bloom in the most beautiful and unique ways. And I think of that as a really nice analogy for the way the practice flourishes and blooms. You know, it happens differently for all of us at different times. And we each have our own kind of beauty in a way to share in this world. But it doesn't happen according to any kind of prediction or wish on our part. It happens according to nature. So it takes a lot of trust and yet also knowing the direction we're trying to lean in. And that is the power of intention. The Buddha talked about karma as being equivalent to intention. Karma is intention, I say, was one of the very important teachings of the Buddha. So the wholesome karma is that karma that is around loving kindness, non-cruelty or compassion, and letting go, giving all. So, the Mettā Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness in English. And this really points to the importance of virtue, first of all, as a foundation for cultivating samadhi to whatever extent we are able to. So, samadhi is the practice of stilling, calming, quietening, and eventually unifying the mind on one particular theme or meditation subject. And at some point today, I thought it might be nice to chant this sutta, because if I go through it now, it'll be a bit, you might not get the feel of it. So perhaps I'll discuss it and sort of, I don't know, give some sort of insight into it. And then maybe at the end of the meditation, could finish with chanting it. What do you think? And unfortunately, I don't have lots of copies, but those who do know it, including on Zoom, are very welcome to chant along. Okay? And it'll hopefully mean a bit more once we've looked at it together. So the first verse is the opening verse, and I've slightly changed the translation that's commonly chanted to be a bit more literal. So it's something like this. This is what is to be done by one who is skilled in their own benefit or their own good, to break through to the path of peace. Okay, so straight away we have this overarching theme that these practices are leading us to what is talked about here as the path of peace, santam padam, which basically means the path towards liberation. Path of peace is that peace itself, the peace of nibbana. And then the first couple of verses are focused on our virtue, again, as a foundation. A loving person has to be virtuous. A loving person is naturally trying to minimize the harmful impact that their body and speech and way of thinking has on the world and on themselves. And virtue, conversely, is a strong foundation, a necessary foundation for developing love. And it makes it strong. The Buddha always says that samadhi that's built on a foundation of virtue is of great fruit and great benefit. You know, you might be able to somehow manipulate your mind into deep states of meditation, even when your virtue is a little bit shaky, given certain conditions, but it won't be stable, it won't last, and it won't be of great fruit and benefit enough to break through to the path of peace. So here we go. Let them be capable and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied. So let them be capable means capable and energetic in developing wholesome states. Right? It doesn't necessarily mean capable in terms of the stock market, or I don't know what people get up to. I don't know if somebody was just mentioning to me that their information's on the web, on the web, and there are all kinds of fraudsters in life. So it doesn't mean that kind of capable. It means capable in developing the wholesome states that lead to peace and well-being, that lead to our greater good. And upright is about honesty. It's about being truthful, being sincere, having a sense of integrity. And of course, as we said yesterday, a life without remorse and regret over our conduct naturally ensues in happiness that is blameless. It's not the happiness of ripping someone off or manipulating someone to get what you wish. It's the happiness of knowing that you're living ethically in a straight and undeceptive way. Straightforward and gentle in speech. And there's another word in there, which also, I don't know which Pali word it is, but there's one translation which means easy to teach, which again is pointing to a sense of integrity and honesty, but also humility. It's a theme throughout the Buddha's suttas that in order to really train on the path, we have to be open to feedback. We have to be open to being honest, really, to ourselves and to the people around us, especially our teachers or our spiritual friends, about what we struggle with, about our intentions, about the areas of our lives that aren't perfect yet. and to disclose that, especially in the monastic sangha, we have what's called a patimokkha, which means the recitation of the rules for monks and nuns, the training rules. And in there, the most important thing is not whether you've broken any of the rules, because I think of them more like trainings than object rules. It's more the idea of being transparent and revealing what you have or haven't done. And it's for your sake as much as anybody else's. Usually the response from the Sangha is just, okay, don't do it again. It's not, right, now we're going to wrap you on your knuckles and take away your allowables in the evening. That would be terrible, because our allowables are chocolate and cheese. So they're very important for every monastic. So there's actually no punishment in the Dhamma. And this creates an atmosphere when we can be very honest and open with each other, also about our faults. And, that increases our mindfulness. We become much more aware about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're kind of, just slipping slightly in certain areas of our lives, so that we can be more careful next time and accountable to our spiritual friends. So this is what it means by being straightforward and easy to teach, and then gentle in speech. So having speech that is pleasing, that is beneficial. There's a sutta where it says we should speak words that go to the heart, that are worth recording. In other words, we want to remember what's been said by somebody who speaks in a meaningful and beneficial way. And to say those words gently, to approach people gently, especially if you want to give feedback because you know what this person needs to hear, then we have to be very aware of the right time, the mood the person's in. Maybe ask for their permission, first of all. Perhaps sandwich it with some praise or something you really appreciate about them before you give them some very gentle feedback from a heart of loving kindness. And this brings people together and creates a peaceful and harmonious environment. So gentle speech, right speech, is words that bring together those who are divided, that heal divisions, that don't divide this group from that. And then one should be humble and not conceited. The word there that is being translated as humble is actually soft, which I really like too. It's the mind of loving kindness is a mind that is soft. It's spacious, it's expansive. And softness doesn't mean sloppiness. It more means something that is resourced and resilient. Perhaps it can be spongy. A sponge can be kind of twisted into all kinds of shapes, but it bounces back. Or perhaps you could think of a soft mind like a kind of rubber ball. If you have like a concrete ball of something, or a plate or something like this, and you drop it on the floor, unless the floor is soft, it's going to smash. But if you bounce a rubber ball, it just bounces. It doesn't smash. And the mind of metta is like that soft, resilient, pliable mind. Not being conceited. So not being arrogant, not looking down on others, lauding oneself, disparaging others, not thinking that one group of people are better than another, which may be difficult if it's around political views or right? There's a lot of division in the world, and there are places that we tend to feel a little bit superior, more intelligent, better informed, etc. But if we're actually developing an attitude that's starting to look down or disregard or discriminate against other people, then to that extent, our loving kindness is limited. To that extent, it becomes difficult to generate and develop loving kindness towards those people. And the whole point of loving kindness, as I was saying yesterday, or one of the main aims, is to break down the boundaries between self and other. And in that is great scope for insight into non-self. Realizing that we're all conditioned, products of conditioning, or actually just conditions, right? It's not even like there's an essence of a being that is beyond conditions. This whole thing is conditions, manifesting in various ways. So learning not to discriminate on any superficial differences such as race, gender, sexuality, but also perhaps in terms of people's view, the way they perceive life and the way they go about their life. They're trying to find happiness just as we are. Sometimes it's more and other times less skillfully done. Contented and easily satisfied. This is very beautiful, and it's part of virtue. It's part of what the Buddha talks about as the gradual training, which is, in a sense, an outcome of finding more happiness within through living virtuously. I think it was one of the Zen patriarchs that said, the path is easy for one without preferences. So the more contented we become with whatever kind of requisites for monastics, whatever kind of robes, even if it's falling apart and you've got all this kind of weird patchwork going on, if we can be contented with that, we can be contented with where we live, contented with our practice, our so-called progress, then there's very little problem. You are where you want to be. There's no separation between where you are right now and where you want to be. You're content and easily satisfied, or easy to support for a monastic. Not busy with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Not busy with duties. Oh my goodness, I think only one person in this room. Well, it's not tired anyway, but I don't know if you're not busy. Maybe there's some more people today. Anyone else not exhausted today? Wow, that's a massive improvement. That's like 6 or 7 people. So you're not alone today. And I don't know about the Zoomies, if there's anyone less tired or not exhausted today. Is there anyone raising their hands? Put your hands up if you're on video. That's excellent. Maybe one reason is because you were less busy with duties, and that gives rise to more time to practice loving kindness. So it doesn't mean not fulfilling responsibilities, but it does mean not frittering your time away on frivolous things, things that don't really contribute very much to your life or anyone else's, like scrolling on Facebook. And I am guilty because I have to put a post up there from time to time, and I end up wasting time. So I don't know if I'm the only one in the room, but it could be lonely hour for the teacher. Okay, that's good. And frugal in their ways. A simple lifestyle. When we're more content, when we're more resourced inside, we have loving kindness, a sense of happiness that's more reliable and stable and beautiful, actually, more nourishing for us, then we can simplify our lives. We actually start seeing pleasure in tiny things like tiny little bush flowers or the sunshine on a really cold winter's day. So our minds also become much more simple as well. And then peaceful and calm. Our senses are calmed. We don't need so much stimulation from outside. In fact, stimulation starts to feel quite painful to a mind that's slowly calming down. And wise and skillful. When we have more space, more time, more quiet in our mind, it's easier to make good decisions. We can see our motivations. We can see where we're trying to rush things through. And we can really consider the cause and effect of our behavior more carefully. And again, not proud and demanding in nature. I don't know if anybody here has proud or demanding friends or colleagues, or maybe they're not really friends anymore if they're too proud and demanding. But it's such an energy drain, isn't it? So we don't want to be that person for others, out of loving kindness for them. And then the next thing is a sort of check on our ethical conduct. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. So this is when we're becoming really careful about our conduct. Again, the more clarity we have, the more ethically aligned our lives become, the more we can see danger in the slightest fault. In other words, why spoil your beautiful, clean, shiny mind with even a little bit of a compromise, a little white lie, or a little bit of alcohol, which doesn't, well, it's expensive for one thing, but even if you don't realize it's clouding your mind, you don't feel quite as bright and sharp. So we start to consider what a wise person would do. Now, I often think of this in terms of my own teacher who's getting on, and I go to for advice and just emotional support, just friendship, really. And of course, a lot of Dhamma conversation and guidance in running the project as well, and how to be in an abbot role. And I often think, well, what will I do when he's not there? Who will I turn to? I have other good bhikkhuni friends, but they're usually mostly on the other side of the world. There's one in Washington, US, WAUS, and one in WA Perth. So they're quite a long way off. And then I realized, well, what I would do is ask, what would he do or what would they do in that situation? So we can ask ourselves this: what would a truly wise person say about what I'm about to do? Because it's not that you'll always have somebody watching you, hopefully, but our mind is always with us. We always know for ourselves. So having role models and living up to their trust in a way. So with this sila, with this foundation of virtue, we can start to actually practice metta. And the next part of the sutta is about just that. So again, I've slightly retranslated because the translation that we chant is made poetic for chanting's sake. But the literal translation here is that we start to practice by wishing, may all beings be happy and safe. May all beings take care of themselves happily. So very simple wishes. Yesterday, someone was asking if we can wish, may I feel this or experience this. And I think the reason it doesn't work, other than being slightly conditional and wanting certain results, is that it's not such a simple, universal wish. It needs to be something where we can say, may all beings, be basically happy and safe, the basic fundamental necessities of life in order to thrive. So this is how we practice. So it's a certain kind of love that's being talked about here, a benevolent love of well-wishing, concerned with a person's good and without personal expectation. Without even expectation that they are happy. It's not, may you be happy, for goodness sake. We're not demanding that somebody be happy. We're not proud and demanding in nature. They can be miserable for the rest of their lives. We wish they wouldn't, but we can still wish them happiness and safety. So the type of love is not even necessarily sentimental, or we might not necessarily have warm and pleasant feelings, but there is still this attitude of benevolence. And then the next part starts to include all beings. So whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none. My teacher used to joke and chant, omitting none, which was sometimes funny and sometimes not very funny, depending on how omitted I felt. So I would chant, omitting monk. It was a bit silly. Anyway, this is in public too. Whether they are weak or strong, omitting none. The great or the mighty, medium, short or small. The seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. So here we're getting into what I described yesterday as that spatial expansion, the inclusivity side of loving kindness. So first we purify the love to be a benevolent love of well-wishing, concerned with a person's true good. And then we start to spread and expand without prejudice, widening the circle of our love. So it doesn't say whether, actually this could be added, whether we like them or not, whether they are ethical or not, whether they are liberal or conservative or not, something in between, anarchist, maybe. So, but it basically means all living beings. And it's saying here, even those beings that we may not notice, we may not be able to see with our naked eyes. So it can include microscopic beings. It can include beings in other realms. in the ghost realms, in the Deva realms. And what else is there? There's like yakas and nagas and all kinds of mythical creatures in the Buddhist texts, which some people do actually report seeing. And yeah, my own teacher in Burma used to talk about devas, heavenly beings, quite a lot, to the point that sometimes I thought, is he living with them more than with us? But this was a very real part of life in Myanmar, in a place where people had developed such subtle sensitivity to, I guess you could say, energy, but also to be able to see um, different beings living in different realms. And he would talk about it as simply as, well, I went down to the shop to buy some bread today. And it became sort of quite magical. You could actually feel that the energy was supercharged in that place. And he'd been meditating since the age of about 6 or 7 and developed very deep meditation in his teens, sort of 14 to 16. He used to sit for 3-day stretches without even going to the toilet. So this is what we call deep samadhi. And as a result, we can develop our faculties that way and actually see that there are beings in other realms. For me, it's a lovely perception to have, just the idea that this can be possible, whether we feel that we sense these beings or not. It can just increase our sense of wonder, our sense of reverence, maybe our sense of care that we have towards all life forms. And yeah, bring a much bigger perspective, realizing that there's more going on right now than we might realize. What it doesn't mean is that if you have parasites, you don't take antibiotics. Okay. Because sometimes people say, well, what about the creatures in my belly? I have a lot of creatures in my belly. I don't know about creatures, but anyway, a lot of bacteria that are in the wrong place. I don't need to go into detail. And I do take herbal antimicrobials, and I'm quite happy to do that because it is harming this being here. So remember, the human life form is very precious, and we don't cause undue harm when we can help it. If we're able to be vegan, if we're able to be extremely conscientious in our choice of how we source our food, etc., fantastic. But that's also a privilege. It does take a bit more time, sometimes more money, more education, etc. So try not to, judge it too much. But of course, be careful how we live and how we regard or disregard those little creatures that might be so-called in our way. We can take time to move a worm off the pavement and put it back in the soil, or, develop that extra mindfulness if we're overseas and where we don't, or even in England these days, where we don't swat a mosquito, right? The mosquito just wants a little drink. It'll be done very soon. So, yeah, you don't have to do that, but, we have to take care of all beings, those living near and far away, born and to be born. So those who are in between lives, or if you don't believe in past and future lives, maybe those who are currently in utero and are about to be born. They can feel our loving kindness. My best friend, when she was pregnant, was fortunate enough to be on retreat with, I think, Ajahn Suchito, and yeah, Ajahn Brahm was around, I was around, we were chanting and sending good vibes. And I think I've heard from other people that were doing a lot of meditation while they were pregnant, and they have very smooth births a lot of the time. It's not absolutely guaranteed, but I don't think it's going to hurt. It might really help. And interestingly, my best friend's little boy, when he first came to, or I went to visit him, he was only about 1 or 2, and he just loved Buddhas. It's like, Buddha, 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 every time he saw a statue. And he went to collect all the Buddhas. That was in my place, yeah. He went to collect all the Buddhas from the house and put them all in a row. But of course, beings in the womb, they do hear voices too. So if your voice is, and your speech is gentle and loving, then they will be affected by that. Gosh, time is flying. So the next part is more of an instruction and maybe a determination we can have. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. So again, even those who live currently in maybe quite a depraved state of anger, ill will, cruelty, or any realm, any state at all. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. So when there's loving kindness, we can't wish harm upon another. When we do wish harm upon another, that's certainly the opposite, isn't it, of loving kindness. So hopefully when we talk about resentment and anger, at least it doesn't come with that, actually wishing a person harm and then acting for their harm. So the time is going fast, and I do want to get through the sutta, but at this point it might be good to say a few words about what to do if we do have anger or ill will, or what do we do when someone has anger, ill will, hostility towards us? What do we actually do here? Do we put ourselves in harm's way and think, oh, my loving kindness will protect me like a shield? I can turn their arrows of hate into flowers, just like the Buddha did, or not? And I think one of the ways, the first sort of course of protecting ourselves is to protect our own virtuous conduct, to protect our own virtue. And this comes from a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 8. It's called effacement. And in there is a whole list of all the possible things that other people can be and how they can behave. Of course, other people. We do the same. But it says things like, others will be angry, I will not be angry. Others will be difficult to teach, I will be easy to teach. Others will be cruel, I will be not cruel, or I will be compassionate. Others will be dishonest, I will be honest. It sounds very simple, but it's a sort of determination we can make. It's almost as though we can learn from people who do things that are not skillful as much as we can learn from those who do things that are skillful. We might not associate, it's not advisable to associate with them as much, of course, but we can still look and see, well, this is the consequence of someone who's cruel. Let me not be cruel. Others will be miserly, I will be generous. So we protect our own virtue and we determine not to do the same. Another way is to see things differently, to try to reframe the way we see a person's behavior. First of all, to understand that if we are criticizing someone, we criticize their behavior and not them as a human being, not them as an individual. There's a difference between condemning someone's behavior and condemning a person as a bad person. We say, well, that behavior was unskillful, rather than that person is bad or evil or wrong. And there's another sutta, again, this is a fast track teaching on overcoming resentment in the Anguttara Nikaya. Maybe the Zoomies can, take note, or anyone here can take note. Maybe we can send it to the retreatants afterwards, maybe. It's the Anguttara 5, number 162. And it talks about different types of people. So there's a kind of person whose verbal behavior is pure, but bodily behavior is impure. In other words, they don't do the right thing, but they might speak well. Another person might speak in a really rough way, but their physical behavior is actually quite wholesome. And in both cases, we have to engage with the wholesome part of that person. So the simile that the Buddha uses is, it's like you see a dirty rag on the floor, and in the Buddha's day, people used to make robes out of dirty old rags. There were these ascetics that were called rag robe wearers, and some who even took their robes from charnel grounds, so from dead bodies, corpses about to be burned, and they would sort of take the good bit and then clean it up. So he said you put your foot on one piece, on the dirty piece, and then you rip off the good piece with the other foot, and you take the other piece and clean it and make use of it. So in the same way, we discard or stop engaging, stop over-focusing on a person's faults, and instead try to focus on the good and try to encourage that in them, maybe give them positive reinforcement, maybe engage with that part of them. So if they say something really unkind, we just don't pick it up. We maybe ignore it, disregard it completely, and encourage the good. So this starts to change the way we view that person. And as a result, the person will want to continue to show their best over time. I mean, this is the idea. But then, of course, there are people whose verbal and physical behavior are really off. And I won't give you examples because I'm sure you've got many examples of your own, but also in the future, because it's becoming such an ingrained pattern. So the only response that's possible to have really is compassion, and keeping a distance, like I said yesterday. And then there's another example for a person who is actually a very ethical person. And lo and behold, we can have resentment to them as well. Has that ever happened to you, that you actually get really angry and upset with somebody who's basically a really good person? At least most of the time. And maybe then you turn the resentment on yourself for that. I don't know. But with this kind of person, also, we can learn to see them as um, like the shade of a tree, that a shelter where we can actually take refuge. So, in other words, instead of feeling jealous or resentful or, just plain irritated with them, we can actually recognize that they have all these beautiful qualities and rejoice in that. Because again, it's not about a person. It's not like they have it, I don't have it, or everyone likes them and not me. It's just that if they have good qualities, then that's going to make them happier and other people around them. And isn't that what we're after anyway? We're after the good of all, not only how we may feel smaller or bigger in relation to others. We want the happiness of all, of society as a whole. So if we can start to rejoice in whatever qualities they have, then we can actually get inspired by them rather than resentful. So again, it's just changing our perception in that regard. However, what if we resent ourselves? What if we have this voice inside that just constantly puts ourselves down and criticizes ourselves for doing everything almost right, but not quite good enough? Anybody relate? Okay, quite a few. You didn't even all raise your hands because you probably feel really down on yourself for that. So that's another point to criticize yourself on, isn't it? Well, firstly, that line of thinking is conditioned and it isn't a self. When we talk about the inner critic or the inner tyrant, it is not a being, it's not an entity that's permanent, it's just a pattern of maladaptive thinking that has been, in a way, inherited from all the conditions around you. The way that other people have spoken to you or about you, the way that other people around you have spoken to themselves. And like anything else, it can be changed. It's a sort of narrative that we've got fixated on and built a sense of self around. And weirdly, as human beings, we seem to be happier with any sense of self that's sort of we can attach to and feel solid around than to change. Because it's better to be something than to not really know who we are. But when we start to see how much this hurts, how afflictive this can be, we can start to gradually learn to change our thinking patterns. Firstly, the Buddha said when he also saw, before he was enlightened, these patterns of thinking, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of cruelty, thoughts of sensuality as well. And he realized that, there are these kind of thoughts which are basically for my harm and don't lead towards nibbana. But on the other hand, there were these beneficial thoughts, thoughts of loving kindness, again, thoughts of compassion, non-cruelty, thoughts of non-sensuality, letting go, renouncing, simplifying the mind and the life. So what if I put these thoughts over here and these thoughts over here and recognize that these positive thoughts do lead to nibbana, do go for my benefit and everybody else's benefit too. And just this discernment, just being able to differentiate between these two types of thoughts was enough for him to naturally start to cultivate the wholesome. We don't want to be miserable, but sometimes we're running on conditioned pattern. So as soon as we see what we're doing, that can be the beginning where we can start to change our minds. And then there's another sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 20, the one after the previous, which was 19, where the Buddha has these different methods to overcome unskillful thoughts. And the very first one is substitution. which means literally replacing an unwholesome thought, especially a thought of ill will in the case of loving kindness practice, with a thought of goodwill. So instead of may this person get out of my way, may this person get a move on in the traffic, say may you be happy, may you be safe, especially if they're really speeding. May you drive safely and reach your destination at the perfect time. So we can replace these thoughts. And that's what we're doing here, isn't it? We're starting to suggest and, introduce a different way of thinking during our meditation that can accompany any kind of meditation, actually, and really start to condition our minds in a different direction. So this will start to happen more and more, and we'll overcome our anger towards others and our anger towards ourselves. So I'll stop there because there's a lot more to say about ill will, but I think hopefully that's quite a lot already. And the point is, as much as you say about it, it has to be practiced, right? It isn't an overnight thing. So just knowing there are different ways we can look at people, at ourselves, we can train our mind to think in different ways. We can start to really focus on what is for our benefit or our harm. This is already the abandoning of ill will. We become much more able to withstand other people's anger as well. We're much less reluctant to compromise our own well-being. And so we start to change our choice of friendships, etc. So I'll continue through the rest of it. This is a beautiful simile that is often used for loving kindness. So the next verse goes like this. Just as a mother or any caregiver really, at the risk of her life, I've retranslated it slightly. Okay, let's see. Just as a mother at the risk of her life protects her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cultivate love towards all living beings. So sometimes people say, they read this and they think, oh, that means loving kindness is what a mother has to her child. But that's not true. Just as a mother at the risk of her life protects her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Should one cultivate love and a sense of protection and goodwill towards all living beings. So the difference is, it's not about me and my child, it's about all living beings. And we can see living beings as our children. Sometimes nurturing feelings may arise towards people who are younger. We can see them as our brothers, our sisters, our siblings, as our caregivers, parents. I have so many parents throughout India and Burma where I've spent most of my adult life. And cultivate that same sense of care, of love, of goodwill. One of the reasons I think that a child is used is because a child is vulnerable, precious, small, helpless in the world, and they really need love to survive. So we protect other beings. And then again, spreading that love, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. So this is having developed metta and now spreading that metta. As we spoke about yesterday, there's a way to do it sequentially, and then the aim, in a sense, is to be able to spread it in every direction, free from hatred and ill will. And we know by now that it's free from hate and ill will because we've gone through the different categories, perhaps, if we practice that way, and we've overcome that second hindrance. And this is the defining feature of true loving kindness, that we've overcome ill will. Temporarily in the states of jhana, deep samadhi, or maybe even just before jhana, it's temporarily overcome, but not really stably. But once we enter jhana, which can last for many hours, the hindrance of ill will simply cannot arise. In fact, none of the hindrances can arise for a long period of time. And so this is really a powerful step in the practice. You actually know for the first time the happiness beyond these 5 hindrances, the happiness even beyond the 5 senses, if you're really immersed in that state. And, you know, if you experience something like this, there'll be a reluctance. The mind actually won't want to pick it up again. Of course, it'll come back again because you're not yet enlightened, but you'll be able to see how it arises and hopefully prevent it from taking hold before it can turn into anything like resentment. Of course, the more we practice, the weaker these hindrances will be generally in our day-to-day life. So this is when the metta practice becomes a true Brahma Vihara. And a consequence of that, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. In other words, the divine abode, divine abiding of the Brahma Vihara. So we can sustain that in different postures as long as it lasts. So we have what's called sati sampajanya, which is that continuity of mindfulness and wisdom combined through the practice of metta. And lastly, the last verse talks about wisdom. By not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one or the virtuous one, having attained to view, in other words, stream winning, the first stage of enlightenment, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So here we're jumping from the practice of deep meditation to the experience of stream winning, the first stage of enlightenment. And as I said yesterday, there's a phrase in the suttas, samadhi pachaya yatha bhuta jnana dasana, which means samadhi, deep meditation, is the cause for seeing things as they truly are. So our view naturally gets purified and we start to see in line with the Buddha's insight into the Four Noble Truths. And with such vision, how can ill will really arise in the same way it used to? For the first stage of enlightenment, it's still there, but because there's no wrong view of a permanent self, it disappears very quickly. There's nothing really for it to stick to. So this is the way we slowly liberate ourselves, and then not being born again into this world is basically full liberation. So this is the Mettā Sutta, and it took a little while to go through, but hopefully it's of benefit to you. I think there's nothing more powerful than reading the Buddha's words. And yeah, perhaps at the end of the meditation, we could chant the Mettā Sutta. And you're welcome to join in if you wish. Very good. So let's just settle ourselves and do some meditation. I was thinking for this session to see if we can introduce a couple more categories, just spending a little bit of time with a so-called, let's not call them a neutral person, a person that you don't have strong feelings towards. Maybe you don't know them, know of them perhaps. It's good to have someone who you can at least visualize or sense. And potentially, for those who feel ready, we could try a few moments of loving kindness with someone we dislike. So again, please don't choose anybody who is going to trigger strong emotions in you. But maybe somebody who you just don't consider a friend. Maybe they have opinions that you find unpleasant or repelling. Maybe they irritate you from time to time, or someone you've ignored for a while but feel, yeah, feel ready to bring up in your mind. So that's for those who are ready at the time we get there. If someone already comes to mind, then that's fine. Otherwise, just allow the process to be natural. And you can always stay where you are with yourself or a loved person and continue with that for the whole session if that's what nourishes you best. And let's begin today by just imagining ourselves receiving loving kindness. Perhaps from the people in this room, or from the golden sunshine that's pouring in, or maybe from a teacher, even a Buddha, or someone who represents benevolent goodwill to you. Just imagining them showering you with loving kindness, or that loving kindness being suffused in the rays of the sun, the atmosphere of the room. Imagine how it would feel to be unconditionally loved, regarded with kindly eyes of benevolence, care. And allow that to soak through your body. Notice your body's response. Whether this is happening for you or not right now, just opening to the possibility of being bathed in benevolence. Suffused in goodwill. Allow it to spread through your body from the top of the head to the tips of the toes, and perhaps circling those parts of the body that feel tired or tense, sick, injured. Allowing yourself to bathe. To relax. When you're fully accepted the way you are, whether you're healthy or sick, successful or less successful according to your estimation. This person, this love, doesn't judge. You're totally safe, totally accepted, just as you are, without having to deserve it or live up to anything at all. It's just available for you, for all living beings. Now we're going to invite the friend or benefactor to receive, to share in this loving kindness. Just connecting with any feelings of well-being or ease that you're experiencing now. If it's comfortable for you, allowing your awareness to hover around the chest or any part of the body that feels at ease, resting your awareness lightly and bringing to mind the dear person, friend or benefactor. Looking into their eyes, perhaps smiling at them, sharing a moment of appreciation for who they are, a friendship or relationship. And contacting your heartfelt wish for their happiness, peace, safety or ease. And begin spreading loving kindness to them through using the phrases that feel resonant for you, for them right now. Repeating each phrase clearly, calmly, rhythmically, from your heart to theirs. And pausing between each phrase to allow the mind to incline towards the feeling of loving kindness. Noticing the reverberation, the meaning of those words in an embodied way. Perhaps seeing this person start to relax and glow as they receive your loving kindness. If you do notice pleasant feelings, feelings of warmth or tingling, peace or ease, maybe even joy arise, nurture those feelings too by making them important, giving them space, allowing them to be, whilst continuing to share your loving kindness with this dear friend or being. If you wish, just allowing this person to move to one side and bring in a neutral person, a person you don't really know that well, don't have strong feelings of liking or disliking towards. Imagine them now sitting in front of you, perhaps looking into your eyes, noticing their own humanity. You might not know much about them, but just noticing they too are human. They desire happiness. They probably have their own struggles in life. And share thoughts of loving kindness with them as well. Wishes that they probably have for themselves. And just keep connected to the feelings in your heart, noticing if they change. Continuing to build that fire of loving kindness with repeated use of the phrases, sustaining your attention on this person and taking your time. Could be someone in this room that you don't really know, haven't spoken to much. Is what kind of effort or energy is needed to sustain loving kindness for the neutral person? Maybe repeating the phrases more often, tuning up to subtler feelings. The emotion changes, which is fine. Notice the unique flavor of loving kindness now. Fine, there is a big difference. Metta needs a boost. Please practice loving kindness for the loved person again for a while. And if your mind, your heart feels ready and resourced, you may wish to bring in a more difficult person and extend these wishes of loving kindness to them. They don't have to be sitting as close. You can invite them in just for a while, whatever is comfortable for you right now. You keep your dear friend close. Just see if you can develop some loving kindness, some well-wishing for the difficult person's basic happiness, safety, and ease. Staying close to your heart, respecting your limits, and always taking care of whatever arises. Necessary remembering to include metta for yourself. Notice sadness, irritation, fear arise. Going back to the love person, that feels more resourcing for you. Now just allow the metta to start spreading in every direction beyond individual beings. By connecting with any feelings of ease, of peace, of well-being, and just imagine them trickling out to all beings in front of you, as far as metta flows right now. All beings to your right, to your left, and behind you. all beings above, in the skies, all beings below. As if metta was just radiating in every direction to all beings, as far as it will. Just allowing it to spread. And resting in the wide, vast mind. Allowing the mind to be light, to be free. Immeasurable loving kindness for all beings. Slowly coming back into your own body. Once again, imagining just basking in the loving kindness that's available right now. Perhaps again, placing yourself in front of a Buddha or someone else who personifies loving kindness for you. Maybe an image of loving kindness, a beautiful color or golden rays of the sun. And just rest in your body. Receiving love.